promised you guys more wiring videos. Here we go. 5-volt system. Jeep Psychology 101. Wiring 101. Let's dig in. Okay, today we're going to be covering a lot of stuff. We're going to be covering, like I said, the 5-volt system, which consists of your battery temperature sensor, your crankshaft position sensor, air intake temperature sensor, throttle position sensor, idle air control motor, oil pressure sensor, map sensor, coolant temperature sensor, and your camshaft sensor. So as I've said in previous videos, what we're dealing with here is a CCD dashboard communication system, which is a 2-wire twisted pair that's going to come off of your C3 connector and is part of the Jeep. But it's important that you have the right PCM out of your donor vehicle and the proper engine, because if you've got a 32-tooth reluctor wheel, it will not work with this 3-plug PCM. If you've got a 32-tooth reluctor wheel motor, your recipient vehicle will have to have a 4-plug PCM, which is the newer style that communicates with a single wire using nothing but data signal open close pulses. It's IO, IO, IO. It's kind of like more along the lines of fiber optics with pulses, as opposed to a twisted pair that's got a positive and a negative. So once we've got that clear, let's make sure that let's move on. First things first, 5 volts. Your C117 is going to be your 5-volt power supply. Now, not all of these, even though they are part of the 5-volt system, not all of them are going to get a 5-volt power wire. Some of these are going to come directly off of the PCM and only go to the 5-volt sensor negative, which is going to be on your C1 pin 4. Okay, so let's start out with the 5-volt negative. Now, you're going to have a 5-volt negative to every one of these sensors that we're covering today, with the exception of the idle air control motor. And it's completely self-contained. It has 4 wires, but while they are in the 5-volt range, they're not connecting to anything that we're doing here other than the PCM. They run direct, all 4 wires are direct from the PCM to the idle air control motor. So first things first, we're going to start with that number 4 pin on the C1. And we're going to get ourselves a ground wire, or I should say a 5-volt negative wire, to the sensor that's in the battery tray. That's your battery temperature sensor. You're going to bring that same wire up here, and you're going to put a pigtail down to your cam sensor, or I'm sorry, your crankshaft sensor. You're also going to go to your camshaft sensor, but I suggest bringing it up here and routing it along with the injector wires. Bring it down. Let's get it down here to our camshaft sensor. Then we're also going to take this same one, we're going to extend it across. And if you watched any of my soldering videos, you'll see how to do a Y. And we're going to bring it down here to our air intake sensor and our throttle position sensor, but we're going to bypass our idle air control motor. So you're going to need 2 pigtails off of here. 1, 2. You're going to need to continue this wire right on down. And we're going to have to be able to split it 3 ways again. We're going to have to pick up the oil pressure sensor, which is just above your oil filter on your block. And we're going to have to get to the map sensor in the front of the intake manifold and the coolant temperature sensor. How you split these doesn't matter, but everything here is going to require a 5-volt return wire, a 5-volt negative wire. Okay, and it's important that you keep these grouped together. Now, as we progress through, I'm going to tell you what terminals are going to hook up to which sensor. Okay, so with our crankshaft position sensor. Now our crankshaft position sensor is down here right underneath the exhaust manifold on the very back of the block. And it's going to take a 5-volt positive. Now we've only got about 3 of these sensors that require the 5-volt positive coming off of C117. I'm not, you're going to have to take a magnifying glass and look and find the position of these. But that wire is going to come up here and it's going to split and it's going to come down here to this sensor. It's also going to, you're going to have to bring a Y over here and it's going to have to come down to this group of sensors. It's also going to have to come from here, tie on. So you're going to split it 3 ways. It's going to come around here to your camshaft position sensor, which is right up near the exhaust manifold. It's in the head. Obviously, it's got to pick up one of the camshafts. Since you've got 2 cams in a 4.7, there's only one camshaft reluctor wheel. Now, on your crankshaft sensor, then we also have a crankshaft position signal wire, which is going to come out of your powertrain control module, and it is going to be your crankshaft. It's going to be C1 position 8, and it's going to go only to your crankshaft sensor. On your crankshaft sensor, position 1 is going to be your signal wire. Position 2 is going to be your 5 volts negative, and position 3 is going to be your 5-volt power wire. Moving along to the camshaft position sensor. The camshaft position sensor is going to come off of C118, okay? And you're going to route that wire all the way around here. And that's going to be C118. Now that C118 wire, your position sensor, it's going to go into camshaft sensor position 1. Your 5-volt supply is going to go into position 3, and obviously your 5-volt return is going to go into position 2. Okay, so that covers the camshaft and the crankshaft sensors. Okay, and we've also covered the battery tray, except it's going to have a wire that comes off of your C3 down to here, and I suggest putting a terminal that you can separate in here, like some kind of a ceiling single wire plug that you can pick up from Napa, AutoZone, O'Reilly. Any of your parts houses are going to have it. They're inexpensive, and that way if for some reason you ever go to pull the engine, you can pull these two, C1 and C2, separate this right here, and bring the entire wiring harness out with the engine. Okay, good idea. Don't have to do it that way. It's just going to save you some hassles in the long run, if you ever have to remove the engine. Now your map sensor also requires 5 volts positive. So at this point right here, you're going to want to extend this wire down. You're going to have to make a Y once again, and you're going to bring a 5 volt positive into here. Now, some point over here and probably over here near the back of the engine, you're going to have to leave a couple of additional pigtails. off of your 5-volt wire, because we have one outlier here that I haven't talked about, and we're going to save it for another video. And that's your O2 sensors, because they require both 5 volts and 12 volts. A 5-volt positive and a 5-volt return to the PCM. If you've got a California system, it's going to have 4 of them. If you got a non-California, it's going to have 2. So you need to leave that so you can tie onto it at a later date. I would leave it long. Since you're building this, you may not have your exhaust system built yet. You might not know exactly where you're going to put your O2 sensors. I do suggest running them. These engines will function better with a catalytic converter. You know, use something like the MagnaFlow. They make a really small one that's very low resistance, does a fantastic job. Everything that I've used on here is MagnaFlow, been top notch. So your 2 sensors that require 3 wires is your throttle position sensor, which your throttle position sensor is then going to come off of C1 number 23. There again, I'll try to put it in the video here, a picture with the pins. You're going to bring a control wire down here for this. You're going to bring another control wire for your map sensor from C127. Follow the same routing all the way down to your map sensor. Now that's all your sensors that are 3-wire. Everything else is going to be a 2-wire sensor. It may be operating in the 5-volt realm, and it may tie to the 5-volt negative, but they do not have 3 wires. They come straight off the PCM and go to each individual sensor. As you'll remember in one of my first wiring videos where we covered the basics of the Daimler-Chrysler factory service manual, our sensors are represented as a box, a rectangle, a box. They're not represented in the shape of the device itself. So as you can see here on the crankshaft position sensor, your signal wire hooks to the number 1 terminal, your sensor negative, or your sensor ground, hooks to the number 2 terminal, and your 5-volt supply hooks to the number 3 terminal. Same with the camshaft position sensor. If you follow your 5-volt supply wire, it's going to hook up to number 3. Your signal wire, which comes off of your powertrain control module, is going to hook up to position 1, and your sensor negative is going to hook up to position 2, which comes down, of course, to your C1 on your sensor ground on your powertrain control module, and also ties to the sensor negative or sensor ground on the crankshaft position sensor. I also just want to mention here that if you've got an automatic transmission, your crankshaft sense wire C18, you're going to want to put a pigtail on it because it also ties to the transmission control module. So pigtail that and allow yourself access to get it tied into your TCM. Same with your throttle position sensor. It's also going to tie C123 is going to go to position 12 on your transmission control module. So once again, on those 2, also leave a pigtail off of your control wire, C123 and C1 position 8. Okay, so what we've covered so far, we're done with the crankshaft sensor, we're done with the camshaft sensor, we're done with the throttle position sensor, we're done with the map sensor. Okay, so what we've got left is the air intake temperature sensor and the coolant temperature sensor and intake air control motor. Well, we've got C115, air intake temperature sensor. It's also going to come off of C1. C1, you're going to bring it around over to here, and you're going to tie it to the air intake temperature sensor along with the sensor negative. Okay, now that takes care of the air intake temperature sense. Our coolant temp, it's down here. We've already got our 5-volt negative wire here. We're going to take that coolant temp from C116. We're going to bring it back along here and down to here. That's going to take care of our coolant temperature sensor. The only thing we've got left, cross that off, the only thing we've got left on here as far as your sensors on your engine is going to be your idle air control motor. And you're going to have 4 wires that come off of that. That's going to be C119. Okay, and you're going to bring it out of here, you're going to bring it over and bring it down to here. You're going to have C110 that goes to position 2 on the air intake control motor. It's also coming out of C1 around, and it goes to terminal 2. You're going to have C1 position 11. It's going to come from your C1 terminal, and it's going to come all the way around to here. There again, routed with the other wires neatly and soldered and heat shrunk. And then we're going to have C1 terminal 20, which will also come out of C1 number 20 around to the idle air control motor.
Please subscribe to the channel and ask questions in the comments.
And last but not least, I forgot to write this in, oil pressure. Okay, now it's going to be the one oddball. It's going to come off of C2 over here. And you're going to bring it in, over, around, all the way down the front of the engine and leave enough slack to get down here where you can tie in here. Once again, it's only a 2-wire sensor. 5-volt negative and your trigger, your sense wire on C2. Guys, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up for today. This is an awful lot to cover. If you have any questions, shoot me messages in the comments, and I'll be glad to answer what I can. Now, I can't stress enough, my build was a 98 TJ manual transmission 2.5. My PCM, the one that is correct, is 2000 Dodge Dakota 4.7 liter 5-speed manual transmission. And of course, the engine that I'm using is an older 4.7 with the 16-tooth reluctor wheel. Guys, good luck. That's your mission if you choose to accept it. If you're already in the middle of it, like I said, if you have questions, shoot me messages in the comments. I will be glad to answer them to the best of my ability. Peace out.